My name is Nora Hale, I'm 31, and I work as a physician's assistant at a small clinic on the outskirts of Denver. 3.5 weeks ago, I moved into my husband's mother's house after her spinal surgery. It wasn't a demand or an ultimatum. Rather, an internal decision I made almost automatically. That's what good people do. That's what those who hope their kindness will eventually be noticed. My mother-in-law was Ruth Hale, a woman with impeccable posture, a cool gaze, and a habit of speaking as if every word were a death sentence. Even after the surgery, she retained that expression, reserved, appraising, as if I were a temporary employee and not her son's wife. I stood at the stove, stirring the oatmeal, trying to get it just the way she liked it, not too thick, not too runny. "Nora," came a voice from behind me. "Did you forget the cinnamon again?" I froze. The spoon in my hand shook. "I wanted to add it later, to give it a fresh flavor," I replied calmly, though my insides sank. Ruth snorted. Emma would never forget something like that. Her daughter's name always echoed around the house like a model. Emma, perfect, successful, busy, yet always making time. According to Ruth. In reality, Emma showed up once a week, for 40 minutes at most, with a takeout coffee and the front camera turned on. I set the bowl on the table and helped Ruth sit more comfortably. Over the past few weeks, I'd learned to read her movements almost intuitively, when the pain intensified, when she needed a pillow, when silence was better than words. I'd canceled meetings, swapped shifts, slept in snatches. And still I felt out of place. "You woke up late today," Ruth continued, not looking at me. "I stayed up late. You didn't sleep well last night," I reminded her. "Emma wouldn't complain," she snapped. I pressed my lips together. It wasn't about the oatmeal. Or the cinnamon. It was about something much deeper, a comparison I always failed at. At that moment, the front door slammed. Heels clicked confidently on the floor. "Good morning," Emma said cheerfully, appearing in the kitchen in a perfectly fitting coat. "How's my favorite patient?" Ruth's face changed instantly. The tension disappeared, her features softened. "Sweetheart, how glad you came." Emma leaned over, kissed her cheek, glanced at me and smiled, too politely, too rehearsed. "It smells cozy," she said, taking out her phone. "We need to capture this moment." I stood at the sink, feeling a heavy, sticky fatigue welling up inside me. I was here every day. I knew her medication schedule, was afraid to miss a warning sign, held her hand when the pain became unbearable. But the moment Emma walked in, it was as if I was erased from the room. "There," Ruth said with a satisfied smile as the camera clicked. "I have such caring children." Children. Plural. But my gaze was focused on only one. I turned to the window. Snow was slowly falling outside, a rarity for this time of year. And suddenly it seemed as if I, too, was here temporarily. Like this snow. It would melt and no one would notice. Something in my chest tightened painfully. I didn't yet know that this morning would be the beginning of the end. Or perhaps the beginning of something completely different. After that morning, something inside me finally broke, even though outwardly everything remained the same. I still got up early, made breakfast, helped Ruth with her exercises, kept track of her medications and the time. Only a hollow, dull emptiness appeared inside, as if someone had turned off the sound. During the day, I worked remotely filling out reports for the clinic, and in the evenings I called my husband. Ethan called every day. His voice was my only anchor. "You sound tired," he said one evening. "I just didn't get enough sleep," I replied, though that was only part of the truth. I didn't tell him everything. I didn't want him to feel guilty. His work in San Jose was at a critical stage and he physically couldn't come. I insisted I could handle it. On the third day after Emma's visit, Ruth was especially irritable. She was irritated by literally everything. Too much light, the wrong channel on TV, a pillow not positioned correctly. "You're rushing things again," she said as I helped her up. "I'm trying to be careful," I replied, holding my breath. Emma would understand without words, Ruth snapped. I slowly straightened up. Rut, I began cautiously. Can we talk without comparisons? She looked at me as if I'd said something outrageous. You're too sensitive, Nora. That's not the way it is in our family. In our family. I'd been in it for 5 years, but I still felt like a guest. That same evening, Emma showed up again. This time with a container of salad from a fancy cafe and loud sighs. I'm exhausted, she said, hugging her mother. Work is driving me crazy. My poor girl, Ruth responded immediately. Do you even get any rest? I stood at the stove and listened to this dialogue, feeling anger slowly boiling within me. I brought dinner, Emma added, glancing at me. I thought I'd surprise you. That's thoughtful, Ruth said admiringly. Nora, learn something. That was the last straw. Ruth, I said, turning to her, you know I cook every day, and I stay with you at night. So, she replied coldly, you do it without any heart. Emma smiled faintly, pretending to look at her phone. I went into the bathroom and closed the door. My hands were shaking. I looked at my reflection and almost didn't recognize myself. Tired eyes, a tense jaw, shoulders that hadn't relaxed in a long time. My phone vibrated. A message from Ethan. I miss you. Are you sure you're coping? I sank onto the edge of the bathtub and cried for the first time in a long time. Quietly, silently, clutching a towel so no one would hear. Later that night, I sat on the bed in the guest room and wondered, why am I still here? For what? In the hope of finally being seen? Or out of fear of seeming bad? The next day, Ruth said almost matter-of-factly, if you're so hurt, Nora, maybe you should go away for a couple of days. Emma can come over. She said it easily, too easily. And in that moment, I suddenly realized, if I left, nothing would fall apart. They'd just replace me. Or pretend to replace me. My chest ached, but at the same time, it felt strangely calm. For the first time in 3 weeks, I allowed myself to think about something other than what Ruth needed. And about what I need. I didn't leave right away. After Ruth's words, I spent another night in the house, barely sleeping a wink. I lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the clock tick in the hallway. Each click seemed to measure my patience. In the morning, I made breakfast in silence. Ruth sat in a chair, leafing through a magazine, pretending I didn't exist. No comments, no reproaches. Only a cold indifference that proved far more painful than harsh words. I'll call Emma, she said finally, without looking up. Have her come over today. You can get ready. I froze, holding my mug. Okay, I answered after a pause. My voice sounded calmer than I expected. She looked at me in surprise, as if expecting resistance, excuses, pleas to stay. But I said nothing. I went into the guest room and got out my suitcase. I packed slowly, carefully, as if it were a farewell ritual not only to the house, but also to a part of myself, one I'd endured for too long. The phone rang as I was zipping up the suitcase. Ethan. Nora? His voice was tense. Mom just called me. She told me you're leaving. What's going on? I sat on the edge of the bed. I can't take it anymore, I said honestly. I tried. Really? But I'm the odd one out, Ethan. I always have been. He was silent for a few seconds. I should have insisted you not go alone, he finally said. Forgive me. It wasn't your fault, I replied. It was my choice. And right now, my choice is to leave. At that moment, the front door slammed. The familiar sound of heels echoed through the house again. I'm here, Emma announced loudly. I hope it's not too late. I walked out into the hallway with my suitcase. Emma stopped when she saw me. Are you really leaving? Her smile was tense. Yes, I said calmly. It's your responsibility now. She rolled her eyes. Nora, you understand I can't be here all the time. I have work, a life. Me too, I replied. I just put mine on hold for some reason. Ruth's voice came from the living room. Emma, are you here? Finally. Emma gave me an irritated look. You're making things more complicated, she hissed. As always. I didn't answer. I simply picked up my suitcase and headed for the door. Nora, Ruth called after me. I turned around. I hope you understand that this is your choice. Yes, I said. For the first time in a long time, yes. I left the house feeling like I dropped a heavy backpack. It was scary and painful, but somewhere deep down it felt right. The first few days at home, I was recovering. I slept, walked, and was silent. Ethan was there. He didn't ask unnecessary questions, just held my hand. I try not to think about Ruth, but sometimes I caught myself listening to the phone. On the fourth day, it rang. Ruth's name on the screen made my heart clench. Hello, I said carefully. Nora. Her voice was different. Weak. You were right. I closed my eyes. Emma almost never comes, she continued. I can't cope. It's hard for me. I remained silent, letting her speak. I thought love was words and gestures for show, Ruth said quietly. But it turns out love is when someone is there for you, even when things are hard. For the first time, I heard something other than reproach in her voice. But confusion. I'm sorry, she said. I was unfair to you. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I need time, Ruth, I replied. I can't just go back as if nothing happened. I understand, she whispered. I'll wait. When the conversation ended, I sat in silence for a long time. It still hurt inside, but not as much as before. I didn't know how the story would end. But for the first time, I felt like I was no longer betraying myself. Almost 2 months had passed. Spring was coming into its own in Colorado. The air was milder. The morning sun was peeking through our apartment windows, and life was gradually returning to its normal rhythm. I was working full-time at the clinic again, and in the evenings, Ethan and I would cook dinner together and talk about little things that had previously seemed unimportant. The inner tension I'd lived with for so long was slowly easing. Ruth rarely called. At first, it was awkward and brief, as if she were afraid to say an unnecessary word. Then the conversations became calmer. No reproaches. No comparisons. Sometimes she'd simply ask how my day had gone. And each time, I caught myself in surprise. There was no longer any coldness in her voice. One afternoon, she asked to see me. I'm walking better now, she said over the phone. The doctor cleared me to leave the house. I'd like to see you, if that's okay with you. I stared out the window for a long time before answering. Let's try, I finally said. We met at a small cafe near our house. Ruth had arrived earlier and was sitting by the window. She looked older than I remembered. Her movements were cautious, her face tired. But when she saw me, she stood up and smiled awkwardly. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. We ordered tea. We were silent for a while. I've been thinking a lot, Ruth began, looking into her cup. All my life, I've been making excuses for Emma. It was easier for me to believe in an image than to see reality. And you were there. And I rejected that. I listened without interrupting. I hurt you, she continued, and I may never be able to undo it. But I want you to know, I'm grateful to you. Sincerely. The words were simple, but there was no falsehood in them. It was important for me to hear that, I said. But even more importantly, I now know how to set boundaries. Ruth nodded. And that's right. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. It was a mature, cautious beginning to a new relationship, without illusions, but without hostility, either. Later, Ethan told me, I'm proud of you. You didn't break. You chose yourself. And he was right. Sometimes love isn't about enduring until the end. It's about leaving at the right time. I no longer tried to earn anyone's approval. I knew the value of my care, my time, my heart. And that was enough. The story wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And for me, that was what mattered.